My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Eric here, and I've got a guest, Gary Findley, on today, everyone. He's been a friend for a while and a guy that I respect in the franchising industry. So I asked him to come on because he's mostly in the service-based business. Well, is in the service-based business. He does have experience in brick and mortar, but I wanted him to come on today to answer questions from people here, that the questions that people have about service-based stuff, because the grass always seems greener on the other side. So when us retail businesses are shut down, there's nothing more that I would want to have right now, Gary, than one of the restoration businesses where have people going in and cleaning stuff, or what we now know as one of the essential businesses. Right. And that's a term that I wasn't even thinking about before, but that is definitely super interesting and on my radar. And that's one of the reasons I'm starting a roofing franchise as a franchisor too, because it's a business that when a roof gets damaged, it needs to be fixed. So right. Why don't you give the audience just a little bit, like a brief history of your background, and then really the 2 brands that you're involved with today. And I want to open it up for people that have any questions about anything with Gary, because he can provide just some good leadership answers as well. But Gary, who are you for anyone that doesn't know you?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me on today. So I've been franchising for about 30 years. Actually started my time in franchising when I was about 21 years old. I went to work for a service-based company here in Waco, and ended up going on to there to helping start Curves back in the 90s, the women's fitness chain. When I started, we had a couple of locations. When I left about 8 years later, after being president COO, we had about 8,000 locations in 24 countries. Just crazy, crazy growth. You don't see many of those today, but timing was, perfect for that back in the 90s, mid 90s. So just a great.
That's what we should talk about, is how to have perfect timing on everything.
Yeah, you figure that one out. You and I can retire today. So I don't know if there is perfect timing, but right place, right time. I mean, we were there. Subway was there, right, when it came out with the first sandwich shop. And so for us back then, there's still fitness clubs, but we had small 1,200 square feet, women only, one class, 30 minutes. And it was just completely different than the models you see today. And it changed over time. The environment changes and you have to change with it. After I got out of that, I just started doing development. At one point, I had about a dozen brands that I represented, from kids' cooking school to dogs' daycare to facial salon, kids' entertainment centers. So you name it, we had it. During that, I got the opportunity to go on the board with a fitness chain out of Minnesota. Went up there, was COO, and kind of worked with that till I went through a sale, left, came back to Texas, and started doing the same thing again. Started doing development, went to bed one day, woke up the next, and I had about 6 clients. And one of those happened to be Restoration1 out of South Florida. Met the gentleman there, and he said, "Hey, I need help development," which I think he thought development was all he needed. But development only works if you got a good operations, as everyone knows. And so I got in there about a week later, and it said, you need way more than, way more in development. So you need systems and processes so I can do development. I think he figured that out about January 16. With about 24 locations, I moved the headquarters to Waco, which is my hometown, moved here. And over the next 4 years, we opened up about another 250 locations. And
now, this is in the restoration business. So
Restoration1.
Yep. So this is Restoration1's the franchise name. And you are now out, you're not in the fitness industry anymore. No. And you're not in retail. You are in one of the ugliest businesses out there, and it's cleaning up messes and storm, mold remediation, water damage, and all of that type of stuff, right?
I tell people this is not a very sexy business. When people are looking for businesses, a lot of times, we could be last on their list. It's easy it's been easy to sell health clubs because people don't mind telling their neighbor, "Hey, we just bought a health club." But being a plumber, we also own Blue Frog Plumbing and Drain, which we purchased about 2 years ago. Both of those businesses, now we just happen to be right place, right time, because they're considered essential businesses. They are,
Again, right place, right time for you. And I think, no, they're not sexy, but they're open. Open businesses are really sexy right now. I'm mostly in retail right now. And a lot of people in this Facebook group, a bunch of franchisees in here, are mostly in retail. And the grass is always greener, right? I mean, everyone in here now wishes they were not in retail and wishes they were in the service-based business. And people have had a lot of their businesses have been on autopilot up to this point. Service-based businesses, like what are some of the things that people really should be considering if they think the grass is greener? Because the grass isn't always greener. At least it's open over there, but
right.
is it really greener over there? Like what are some of the things that you love about the service-based space and the things that you would caution franchisees about the service-based space?
The things, having done this a long time, I'm 58. I started looking about 8 years ago. What would I buy? I've been in health club business most of my life. What would I buy? I said, you know what? For me, I want that low investment, low overhead, high margins, fewer employees, no brick and mortar, and recession resistant. And I felt like I found that when I got into the restoration business, because when I say recession resistant, it is because if you wake up tomorrow and you go in, you've got flooding basement, or your house is flooding, or you find mold, it has to be taken care of no matter what the circumstances are. So you have to be able to take care of that, and insurance is paying for it. It's kind of a natural. So, very few things we do are the disaster deals, hurricanes and things like that. But the big is just the day-to-day, everything that happens in a home. With those things, I think that's the best thing about having this kind of business that you can take anywhere. You're not fixed to a building or a location. But another thing is that it doesn't take a lot of employees. It's not that hard of a business. I guess only for our business, the two things, if you had to say what are kind of the obstacles, it would just be licensing. They have to go get certified in certain classes, but those are not highly difficult classes. The business is a low investment. So I tell you, from being in the health club business so many years, I feel for these people. I really do. Hopefully their members do too. I was reading something yesterday about Joe Cirilli up in Jacksonville, that Gainesville Health Club, where he was thanking his members for staying true and keep paying their membership. Go in and do something to have them do that. At least you can keep a base going in. But you know what? This is the U.S. We always come back. We always come back strong.
No, that's it. What are some of the other, we know that the two that you own, in service space out there for somebody thinking diversification, what are some of the other ones that are kind of the essential service-based stuff? I mean, I think trash removal and things like that. Like, what are some other, if you could just off the top of your head, list some of the other like service-based businesses that seem to do better in the recession? Because not all service-based businesses do well in a recession. Right. I know some that don't do well. A lot of people are thinking recession's coming or whatever it is, and they think service-based businesses. And if they get into the wrong one, thinking it's the right one, they're in a worse position. Just industries, which ones are on your radar that you know about? Not even involved with, but just like help the audience.
You just said it, the junk business, that is something people move out every day, whether moving out of apartments, moving out of homes, cleaning up. So some of those things have to be done. So that may seem odd, but the home cleaning business. And the reason is that whenever you get into a recession or a tougher economy, you're going to have two household incomes. And when one of the spouses goes back to work, you don't have anybody there, that becomes an essential. And so you find the money to be able to pay for that. That is another one of those businesses. And there's another business that goes along with the junk business, which is the kind of the valet business for apartments where they're picking up the trash. Somebody has to do that. And there's businesses allowed to do it. And just off the top of my head, I don't know that I can think of a lot others. Well, you know what? HVAC, electrical, all of those are. Yep. HVAC, electrical is also going to fit in that category.
I think even like some type of things like property management and things like that, I think there's going to be, if the economy does start to go into, doesn't keep going strong like it has been, which we think it probably will have some type of recession looming, whether it's an actual recession or not. The economy is definitely not where it was in the beginning of the year. And what I'm seeing and hearing out there from people much smarter than myself is real estate is probably going to start changing hands again. And so with that, there are going to be people that are going to be moving out and people are going to be buying just with property management, things like that. And even with, some type of handyman services.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of those types of things that will probably do pretty well. What do you think about just the shift into online? Do you have your ear to the ground on some of these businesses that may shift more into online stuff? Or are you just completely focused on the ones that you're involved with right now?
Yeah, I really don't, Eric. I mean, I'm driving forward on the businesses that do not use any online at all. For
Just
me,
those
yeah,
dirty businesses.
all of mine, everything I represent are service businesses.
So with that, like what has happened to sales recently?
Again, for our business, and is that it turned to, we do that daily mitigation, mold, all those things. Again, they're paid by insurance, so they continue to happen. But what has now taken another turn of business that is added to is going to be disinfecting. So we're doing a lot of work, whether it be office building, apartments, any type of business. Our franchisees are, reality is their phones ringing off the wall. It's a bigger business. Some of them have had to turn down some jobs just because it's become too big. We work with a lot of national property managers. They're managing big corporate, businesses or retail businesses of some kind. They need one source to go to, which is us. And so it has been a little bit different for us.
Yeah. What other industries out there are thriving? What are some of the non-essentials, franchise or not franchises, that my audience who are franchisees and entrepreneurs that they could be thinking about just in general? Just the service-based industry. In other words, like what are you looking out there? What are some other franchises that you haven't brought to your family, but they're on your radar out there?
Yeah, well, one of them is that maid business. One of them is HVAC. One of them is the electrical business. Anything that I believe where your home has to be serviced. When you think about electrical, you go, well, yeah, if your electric goes out, if your air conditioning goes out, if your plumbing goes out, you're living, especially like right now. I mean, I'm not sure about where you're at, but I'm in Waco, and we're under. There's a better word for it. I call it lockdown, but we're under that, so people are home. So
Mm-hmm.
while they're home, air conditioning's getting used more, the appliances are getting used more. I've never eaten at home so much in my life over the last 2 weeks. I mean, my wife and I were empty nesters with grandkids, and so we go out all the time. Anything that touches, in my opinion, your home, or maybe a business needs a service to a business out there. So for us, that's kind of, we look at those service base that can add on to what we do. We're already in the homes today. For us, that's what we continue to focus on.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because we look at it, going into the roofing space, we're going to be, bringing on franchisees that are going to be really either they're in the sales aspect of it or they're in the operations aspect, like a project manager type background, good at managing multiple things. And so we're going to attract franchisees like that want that stable business in roofing. But then we also think, what other brands are we going to want to bring in to our umbrella of service-based businesses? And ours are all going to be what we're looking at now is all on the outside of the house. So what things happen on the outside of the house that we can be there and we can service? Because once you have that customer base, you're in front of the homeowner, you can start to sell them other things that they need or want. I think about pest control. I know Dennis is in here, and I saw him on Facebook, and there's mosquito control businesses that are more pest control type businesses. Those things people want, and especially people are home more. They don't want the pests and the mosquitoes and all of that around. So I think that is another interesting business.
That, again, it goes back to what are some of the things going to happen in your home. Now, there are some businesses, I mean, that we do right now that work on the outside end. Some of them are windows, power washing, driveways, real washing. There's things today. One of the things that I think could even be in there today, just because people now are much more concerned about whether it's germs or viruses, whatever it may be, it could be the vents, air vent cleaning. So that kind of goes along with other things. People will probably now will look into getting their carpets cleaned more. I was reading this morning about one of our franchisees out in Arizona, and he's teamed up with a company that does vents and a company that does carpet. So when he goes in, hey, they'll do your vents, then they're going to do your carpet, and then we're going to come in, we're going to disinfect everything. So kind of a triage of things happening. But I'd strongly agree with you on the pest side. That's another, I think, going to be a thriving business forever. That's something you're never going to get away from.
No, no. I think, I just wanted to bring you in here to this group because they're like me. I'm like them. We're franchisees and we're always looking for what's next. And it's natural because Gary, we don't have anything else to do, but we can either worry about, is my landlord going to relieve my rent? Am I going to have customers when I come back? And we worry about all the things that we can't control. So I stopped doing that. If I can't control it, I'm not going to worry about it.
Right.
But everyone in here is thinking like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have had a restoration business. I wish I had a pest control business. I wish I had something that people needed today so I could have employees that are actually working and producing revenue. Hindsight's 2020. I should have diversified a couple of years ago into this stuff, Gary, but I didn't. But this group in here, I do know some of these guys in here. They do own fitness and pest control. They are diversified like that. I love that they did that. And I just wanted to bring you in here because I couldn't think of anybody better that has this type of knowledge in service space, and you have empathy because you were in more retail stuff. Anything else? Like what advice would you have for somebody, a franchisee that does have their store closed and they want to jump into something tomorrow and diversify? Is it time or should they wait and see? And just like what advice? I know it's probably different advice for everybody, but is there any advice you would have for somebody like that?
Well, I think that everybody's going to be taking a hard look. I mean, it's just they're going to take a hard look at, what happens later. They'll pull out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That we'll pull out of it. We'll get stronger. All the fitness clubs will be back going strong at some point. But I think it does turn everybody into a thought of, hey, I don't want to be in this position again. The
Mm-hmm.
great thing about pretty much all service-based businesses is that there is a low investment, and you're not having to, because you're not brick and mortar. You don't have to go rent a building. You don't have to have a bunch of employees on a startup. You build it as it goes. I think that's important to people today. And it is a business that's affordable enough. You don't have to think so much about, well, am I going to get an SBA loan, or am I going to be able to go, take money out of my rollover? But as you know, we saw this in 2008. A lot of people got laid off and they said, okay, I'm not going to be in this position again. I'm going to go into business for myself. Everybody has the right fit. Oddly about us, our businesses, most people wouldn't think this, but I would tell you 90% of my base out there are people that come from Fortune 500 companies. They're guys and ladies and men that know how to run and build companies. So now they want to do it for themselves, which is why there's been great success with that.
I was talking to a former business partner of mine, and we were meeting with this franchisor that we were looking at coming into partnerships with. So the two of us were looking at partnering with this franchisor, and they're in the service-based business, and it's a really, really simple model. And it's like a little bit of it's labor, which is low labor, bringing in a little bit of material and charging a lot of money,
Yep.
for something that people want and
Yep.
and need. That's that model. And I don't want to get into it right now because it's I don't have permission to, but that's the model. And we were looking at it and we said, oh my gosh, why do we not just get into this ugly service-based business as franchisees and do it? And because we know how to build teams, we know how to do all this stuff. No, you're not going to make as much money as you could in certain brands, but you can scale it differently and you can grow to that, but it's consistent. And so we started to think like that. I also was asking somebody else that has grown franchises in the service-based business and have sold them to major private equity companies. And I was just picking his brain. Really, really well-known guy in the franchising space. We were having coffee with him and then ended up going skiing with him in Park City last couple of weeks ago. It was just, a lot of time. And I was like, what brands do you love in service-based stuff? And he went into the same stuff you were saying, Gary. He's like, plumbing. He's like, Eric, plumbing, HVAC. He's like, that stuff, painting. He's like, that stuff is fantastic. He's like, I love that stuff. That stuff will always be around. And so I'm like, are you serious? And so I started to question him about some of this stuff. And he just went in. He's like, yeah, these plumbing businesses, it's great. Or an appliance business. Or if you open my eyes up to things that I haven't seen before. But I would caution people out there right now because it's not just any plumbing company, not just any painting or pest control. I mean, because there's some where the franchisors are really good at what they do. And then there's some like you don't want to touch them. In general, I just want to give the audience today just some perspective out there because everyone they're just beat down, Gary. And I wanted to Probably not a lot of people are going to be listening to this today because they're in scramble mode. But next week and the weeks to come, when they're really thinking about diversification, they don't need me. They don't need you. They can go
Right.
on here and listen to this and just start thinking about stuff and then doing some research.
One other thing we talked about a while ago, you said, not every service brand always makes sense. Some of them don't. So to me, right now, this is kind of the best way I can describe it is that when you get into the situation you're in or an economy that's a little bit tougher, then the service businesses, there's ones that are wants and there's ones that are needs.
Yep.
We're in the need business. That to me is a big thing. That's what I was looking for whenever I decided to get in that. So I tried. Now I have some that are in the want businesses. I have those too, and they're there because they will thrive. As the economy continues to move on and pick back up and those kind of things. But today it's just a little bit different. This is something we've never seen before, and just kind of crazy.
It is. And I think that's a very good point, need versus want. And I talk about that a lot whenever I'm working with people to find good brands to buy, because there's a very big difference. And people in some of these service-based franchisors tell their, prospective franchisees that they really are a need-based product. And in their minds, they probably are. But in reality, they're not. I think anybody out there that you ever talk to a franchisor that's in the service-based business, and franchisors can say whatever they want, but you just need to go straight to the franchisees once you
Absolutely.
get to that point and start talking to them. And I think now more than ever, you want to talk to people that were in the last recession. You want to talk to the people that have been in it in '08. See what they did, because like it or not, that's going to come at some point, whether it's this year or next year. At some point, it's it's going to happen. And what also is going to happen, we're going to come out of it and thrive again. It's just, that's the way the world works. And so, but you want to talk to people that were in the last downturn. There's something that's frustrated me a lot in today's environment. I help so many people buy franchises and find good brands to buy, but they talk to franchisees who just started, and they validate and they talk to them, and they're making decisions based on franchisees who have just started. I think that is completely shifting. And I would recommend anybody listening to this, and there's a lot of smart people on here. These guys have all made mistakes, Gary. They're like, yeah, Eric, I know that. I learned that the first time around. Talk to franchisees that have gone through what you think you're going to go through. If you think we're going through a recession, talk to franchisees that have been through a recession in that particular brand, and talk to the franchisor about it. See what the franchisor has to say. Take what the franchisor is saying, compare that against what the franchisees are saying. And if it's pretty close to accurate, then there you go.
Yeah. My kind of rule of thumb that I tell people, if you are investigating a franchise and you go to do your validation and go to talk to franchisees, and the franchisor steers you to certain people, then that's a problem. We really, ours is wide open. Here's a list. Here's the FDD. Here's everybody. Talk to whoever you want to, whether they're in it to now, whether they're new, whether they're old, whether they're not happy, whether people have gotten out for whatever reason. Talk to them. And so I'm not going to block them from that. I don't, because of the validation that we get. And I think that's the best way to do it. You don't want to, obviously, franchisors, and I've worked for some of them, they're going to direct you to the 5 or 6 people they want. And when something happens, those 5 or 6, they give you another 5 or 6.
There's a lot that goes into that. I'm actually going to be talking about that more on the Franchise Secrets podcast, because I think people are going to be buying franchises different as we head into this next season in America. Mm-hmm. But man, I appreciate you coming on here, giving some just perspective of what it's like. Now, do you have franchisees that are franchisees with different brands? They own some fitness brands or something in brick and mortar and restoration?
No, not that I'm aware of. I have some that are in both service brands. They have another service brand, but as far as I know, Eric, I'm not aware of anybody who has another business that's brick and mortar.
Well, that might be changing as my mindset is growing and scaling. A lot of people are still in the wondering what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is people are going to lose businesses. People are going to make wrong decisions. That's what's going to happen. And then there's going to be people like me and my friends and the people that think like me that are ready to help those guys get out, because it really is helping them get out. Now, I've been on both sides of it. I have been on the side where I gave something to somebody because I wasn't doing very good at it. I didn't want it anymore. And I wanted someone to take it over. When I talk like this, I want to take over for somebody. It really is helping somebody out that is throwing in the towel. It's not taking advantage of somebody, because that's the last thing that you want to do. Whether you're in good times or bad times, you don't want to be the guy that's taking advantage of somebody
Right.
and kicking them when they're down. But some of the most loving thing to do is to buy them out if it makes sense for both of you. So just wanted the audience to know that I've been on both sides of that. And so I'd much rather be on the side of buying people out and doubling down in that side. But man, I appreciate you coming on. Any last bits of wisdom for anybody?
I'm all good. Again, I appreciate you having me on here. It's always fun hopping on one of your podcasts or something, doing what I can. I think last thing I would say to everyone is that, again, these businesses have thrived in the past. These brick and mortars, they'll continue to do it. It's tough right now. Hopefully this package that was just put out will help. They'll be able to go get some funds to kind of break through this. They'll come out the other end, but we're entrepreneurs, so we're fighters, right? So doesn't do us any good to curl up. It's not going to go away. I've been bankrupt and lost everything I ever. It was a health club actually.
Well,
Lost
that's a good
everything.
point. I mean, share.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing that
No, no,
story
no.
with people?
Yeah, I was in a health club business, owning a health club at one point back in the 80s and or 90s. I meant it was like the perfect storm. I was on a college campus that didn't have fitness on it. They put in a facility. My landlord's building got repossessed, and new guy comes in, raises my rent. And I bought that business. It's 11,000 square foot health club, and I bought it on just sweat equity. That's how I had it. If I didn't sell memberships, I didn't pay my bills. That semester came back and I looked up, and those people where I usually come in and sign up 1,000 people a semester, I'm signing up no one. Literally overnight. I mean, we had to unload the club at night. Got up the next morning and I was out of a job. I got 3 kids. Just lo and behold, I just laid down to go to sleep, and phone rang, and it was somebody from the Dwyer Group back then, one of the guys that I had known before. And he said, "Hey, I just heard what happened. And how do you hear that quick? Waco's a small town, though." And he said, "I'd like you to come over and be my VP of franchising." So I did, and that kind of gave me my next launch into it. But I understand, I'll be honest with you, I struggle with talking about our business, and that it is continuing to thrive or whatever during this time. I struggle with that because I know other people's aren't.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you said earlier, diversifying, so that way you're always ahead of the game.
Well, that's why I wanted you on here, Gary, because you don't come, it's not just success. There's been, like you said, bankruptcy. And what I think is interesting about that, it's you had somebody that you knew that knew what you were good at and made the call. And I know I talked to some very successful entrepreneurs. I mean, massively successful entrepreneurs outside of franchising that have been bankrupt, and they had the phone call from a friend that said, "Hey, I heard what happened. What do you need? Why don't you come in and help me with this?" And now they are massively successful. And I could tell you story after story after story. And that's why I wanted you on, because you're not just talking from this place of always having success. You can relate to what people are going through and the decisions that they're going to have to make in the days ahead.
Yeah. Well, I would just say good luck to everyone. And I will be like you. I'll be glad when we move out of this and start into another phase. Keep everybody in our prayers.
I got one more question. I got a question that came up. Someone says, at what point does one risk spread themselves too thin in too many different service business verticals? So let's say someone has a beauty business, a health business, and a restoration business. He says it seems like totally different animals. Conventional wisdom says it's better to develop deep expertise in one vertical. What would you say to that?
I would probably say the same thing. I mean, unless you're a great entrepreneur, you can do it, but I don't think you can do it with multiple, one or two or three, something like that. With anything, whatever you focus on is where you're going to be successful at. The other reason, though, to do that is if you have really, really good relationships with somebody that you can say, this guy would be the best for running a health club. This guy would be perfect for running a pest control business, whatever it is. But I think you could easily get spread out too far. One or two verticals, okay. trying to get 3 or 4, I think that'd be very difficult to do.
Yeah. And I just tagged Sebastian, I just tagged Dennis in there so he can comment on that as well. But I agree. I mean, in an ideal world, you have one business and you just go deep and you expand. But now, like, we wish we would have diversified a little bit. And it just depends on you and your team and what you're good at. I'm a fan of partnerships, and that way I can bring in a partner or partner with somebody that's already doing something. So here's something else. Like, if you are in fitness right now or beauty, which are getting, it's tough times right now, why don't you look at investing into somebody that is doing something else and they are already operating and they need some capital or they need some oversight or they need something. So it doesn't always have to be you as the main person in the business. I mean, you can come in as a 10%, 20% partner into a business and bring whatever you're good at, whether it's marketing or, whatever it is that you're good at, bring that into this other business. So yes, it's in a completely different vertical, but what can you provide as an entrepreneur to that partnership group?
Yeah, no, I agree. Going back to your verticals that you talked about a while ago, one of the things that this is personal, I do like that vertical. The reason we do what we do is that if we go in and we do work in a home that has had a flood, we then could see an opportunity to do plumbing work. We could then see opportunities to clean windows, clean gutters, do concrete, do driveway work. So those all feed off of each other. If you got a base of homes that you've been into for other reasons, they feed off each other. So that's why I like that particular vertical and the fact that it ramps up very quickly.
Yeah. So the vertical is not necessarily restoration or fixing stuff or repairing stuff. It's what happens at the home. And so everyone's going to have, and that's why, in one of the brands that I'm involved with, Anthony Geisler, he has several different fitness brands under one umbrella. If you look at private equity groups, that's one thing that you might want to do is just look at some of the private equity groups out there and who they have in their portfolio. That may be something just to start thinking a little bit different versus what you've been thinking. So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, I will let you go. I know that you're out in a ranch. I was driving a tractor the other day. I bought it last year.
I saw you. At least it was a John Deere.
It was a John Deere, but I want to get out there once this whole virus thing is over so I can come play in your ranch. I mean, I'm a fake rancher. You're much more real than I am, and your place looks a little bit cooler than mine. So one of these days I'll make it out there.
It's just nice to get out and just have time,
100%. Thanks, Gary.
All right, buddy. Thank you. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.